Ever since I was a young boy taking over-under bets on how long it would take our class to make the substitute teacher cry, I've been a master at turning monotony into pure excitement. So today we're going to take a new song by Davidas called Amish Whip. Me and Andrea just covered it. So I'm kind of teaching how to play that song as an example of how you can take two simple chords and kind of make it interesting throughout the entire thing, okay? So the original composition, while it's only two chords, is still a very exciting thing because there's so much going on in the mix. There's a lot of cool production techniques being used, and this is something that happens in a lot of modern music, right? The structure behind the song is incredibly simple, right? This is just going to be a 4 to a 1 chord, how I'm seeing it, in the key of C. F to C major, right? At its core, it's just a really, really easy song to play, but when you do something like that, and there's different parts of the song, it can get really repetitive and boring after a while, right? So we're just going to kind of talk about how I kind of went about composing it, arranging it, and I'll just talk about some really easy tips and tricks that you can do, all right? So the original song is B flat to F, but we transposed it for Andrea's voice into F to C. So first of all, what we're going to do is we have the two chords right here, right? This is the 4 chord, F major. I'm just playing the middle 4 strings. Ring finger 3rd fret on the A string, pinky 3rd fret on the D string, middle finger 2nd fret on the G string, pointer finger 1st fret on the B string. Okay? So this is going to be an F major chord. If I get that open high E string in here, it becomes an F major 7 chord. Okay? I'm going to change this to this chord voicing for the C. Alright? I'm taking my pointer finger, keeping it right where it is. Everything else moves 1 string lower. So this is a C major chord with a G in the bass. Okay? So the first part of the song is going to sound like this. Back and forth, okay? So very simple. All I'm doing with my fretting hand is just moving from chord voicings in the same spot, okay? You can think of this as F major 7 with that high E string if you want. In most cases, you can replace F with F major 7. That open E string is going to be important for something we're going to talk about later. But first of all, I just want to talk a little bit about the strumming of this, okay? So right off the bat, it's not as simple as like 1, 2, 3, 4 again, 2, 3, 4 to C. Even if that's the tempo, that's just kind of like the bass core skeleton of the song, right? Just down, 2, 3, 4. You can fancy that up a little bit, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and. That's the first thing you could do is maybe take some of those beats and do something a little extra. All the downstrokes are going to be the full number, and then the word and is going to be an upstroke. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and. That's right off the bat, that's way better than just going down, 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 up, down, up, down, 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 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and. You also may have noticed already, it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, 4, and. Having interesting dynamics, I think, is key to taking two chords and just riding them home the whole time. We're going to talk about different chord voicings in a minute, but you can stick with the same chord voicings, just these open F to C chords, and still make it interesting just by selectively hitting different parts of the strings, different parts of the chord, and then using your palm to kind of like add a percussive muted element to it. So you're gonna break this F chord into little pieces, right? Again, I said I was focusing on the middle 4 strings. So basically, if I wanna break this into account, 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Let's take just the first bar. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and. What I'm gonna do is gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, and. All right, so on the 1, I'm just aiming for the A string. If I hit a couple of them, that's fine. On the 2, I'm aiming a little bit higher through the chord. 1, 2, 3. On the 3, I'm kind of coming down with my entire hand to kind of hit the bridge to add an extra percussive element to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Now right there, that 3 count I think is really important for making an acoustic arrangement because you're kind of trying to emulate what like a drum kit is doing. Usually in a 4 count song, the kick is maybe on the 1 and the snare is on the 3. So that 3 count usually has a little bit of extra pop to it. And that's what we're kind of trying to simulate here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay? Now the rest of this bar is going to be finished out by 1, 2, 3. Just kind of like a down, muted down on the 4, and then going for the B and G string on the and of 4. So what you could start doing is just try doing just that and try to get a rhythm down. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 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 1, 2. And then try to change that to a C chord. 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. But now we're going back and forth between the bars, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and. So you'll notice I'm kind of making variations, but I'm always trying to keep the pulse of the 1 and the 3 somehow able to be heard throughout the entire bar or series of bars, right? I do the same thing with that C. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is gonna be on the 3. I really think that's where a lot of the action happens in the arrangements that I like to make anyways, that I think really kind of makes it sound like it's being driven along rather than just down, 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 up, down, up. Is maybe like on that 3, the second time around, we get an open hammer-on vibe. All I'm doing is I'm taking that C major chord and then I'm hitting the downstroke, but my middle finger is off the string. It usually is on the 2nd fret of the D string, but it starts off and it gets hammered down onto the D string, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Okay? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Just try to do that on a loop, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2. So one way to start incorporating that is let's just really strike just the bass note on the 1 and get the hammer-on beginning on the 3. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and. Okay? One thing that I want to point out is that when I hit that hammer-on, I'm doing it in time. It's not 1, 2. Try to hear the 3 and with the hammer. 3 and. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. And. Same thing on the F chord. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2. Again, as long as that you're strumming it correctly, you can hit strings that you're not aiming for and it's still going to sound pretty good. You know what I mean? That's the beautiful thing about playing in a key where the open strings are also existing in the key. All right? That's going to take us to our next way to kind of change up the chord voicings and maybe go to a different part of the neck to get a little bit more variation, right? So we've already talked a little bit about how you can just use percussive palm muting techniques and thinking of the 1 and the 3 like a drummer might think to kind of get a little bit more of like a 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and to C. But those chord voicings are traditional, which isn't bad, but maybe you want to kind of just switch it up a little bit. Let's take the same chord. I'm taking the same shape, this F major shape, focusing on the middle 4 strings, right? And I can just move this shape all the way to where it would be a C. I can count through the musical alphabet to find that. F major, F sharp major, G major, G sharp major, A sharp major, B major, C major. I'm really just lining it up with the 8th fret. Right? That's why it's good to kind of track some of the root notes. So if you're interested, I'm definitely going to have a link to the masterclass that I made about just like learning the fretboard. It's going to be on sale for the next 5 days. So definitely check that out if you want to learn more about that kind of shortcuts to kind of help you figure all that stuff out. But I'm just taking my pointer finger going from the 1st fret to the 8th fret. I can still use the open strings to help me out to different degrees. I don't like getting that low E string in there because it kind of overpowers stuff, but I'm really okay with the high E string being in there, right? So you can see that my thumb is actually just kind of creeping over to mute that low E string. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I can still get a hammer on like that, right? So now I'm going back between F to C. And then the nice thing about that transition, utilizing the different space that you're in, you can take your pointer finger, not even necessarily make it a bar chord, but use your pointer finger to utilize the thickness of that low E string and how it has kind of like a dominance over how you can hear things to slide it back to the root of the F major chord without ever using it as a bar chord. You just use that to slide, right? So just another way to connect those, all right? Again, same 2 chords. You can actually get into extended chord voicings, which is something I do in almost every single song that I play. So if I'm playing an F to a C, I could do F major 7 to C major 7 using different chord voicings, and do the same exact thing, but maybe just train them in different spots. So I'm going to take this F major 7. I know that the 8th fret on the A string is an F note. I can make a chord from here, right? Just like that. So now I've got 8A, 10D, 9G, 10B, and then I've got another chord where I'm focusing on the middle 4 strings. I can bar the high E string to get a fuller sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and same kind of deal. And then find another chord in that same area. No matter where you are on the fretboard, there is a way to make any chord, just learning like different fingerings and voicings and stuff like that. So that's why it's really good to know. We already talked about the 8th fret on the low E string being a C. Again, just look up, I have like a D'Addario app that just shows you different chords that you can kind of cycle through them and find stuff. That's why it's really a great handy guide if you just want to get into learning more chord voicings. But guys, this is a C. Let's find out what a C major 7 voicing would look like rooted right here. This is a great one right here. 8E, skipping the A string, 9 on the D and the G string, and then 8 on the B string. So this is just a different way to play the same thing. Or, like we did with the inverse of this, I can take the same chord voicing from the F and move it to a C, which would just be the 3rd fret on the A string. Okay, so we've talked about kind of using inflections to get a certain type of sound. We've talked about moving different chord voicings around. Let's talk about incorporating other notes in the scale to try to make it even that much more interesting, right? So even though we're not using other chords in the scale, we can use all those notes because those notes are in these chords anyway. Let's talk about maybe going from that C major 7 to that F, the 3rd fret, to the 8th fret on the A string. Again, I said this is a 4 to a 1 in the key of C. Key of C has 7 notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Those are 7 ones. So C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4. There's 2 notes that I'm skipping over when I go from C to F. If I know the C major scale, I know that the 5th fret on the A string is a D, and the 7th fret is an E. So I can make a little transition in between. But the move that I want to talk about is actually going past your target chord and coming back to it. So for example, what I'm talking about is going to be this. C major 7. So I'll do that slower. C major 7. I'm using these octave runs, right? So an octave, basically if I have the 3rd fret of the A string, down 2 frets, 2 strings down, is going to be the next C. So 3A and 5G. This is just going to be 2 of the same note, which I don't have to worry about it being major or minor. I can just run this through that scale. So remember I said the 5th fret and the 7th fret are on the way to the 8th fret. Well, the next note in that key, here's the F. After the F is going to be G, the 10th fret. I think it sounds pretty cool to do like a run where you're going, go 1 note past your target note and come back to it, okay? In this case, back to the chord voicing that I want to use. So C major 7, C, D, E, G, F, back to C. Okay, so making those connections, or even just, they don't even have to be in order like that. You can mix and match them up however you want. But I think it's like an interesting way to take just two chords and still utilize some of the music theory that you know, some of the other notes and chords in that, without technically changing to a different chord. You're just getting them along the way. You're hitting them in passing. And again, however busy you want to make this is totally up to you. The way that I kind of did this song with Andrea is a way where it's not, it's still interesting for me to play. I feel like it's interesting to listen to, but also it's not really getting in the way of the real star of the show, which is Andrea, right? I don't want to step on her voice. I want to let her have room to kind of like just shine, because at the end of the day, simpler is almost always better. So you don't want to make it too busy. You don't want to get too kind of muddled using like all sorts of chord progression or chord voicings and stuff like that. But using a couple different ones, I think, is always just a cool trick to kind of make things a little bit more interesting. So definitely thanks for checking it out. By the way, this is a Taylor 614 guitar. Some people have some questions about it. Builder's Edition, really awesome guitar. And if you want to learn more song lessons, I've got a ton of them up on my Patreon, and I'm always adding new ones, so if you have any requests, let me know. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.